One of my favorite paintings is by Van Gogh, and it has a few tables outside on the street, and it's at nighttime. There's a lot of color in it, and I like it mostly because of the style and the way it was painted. By me describing this painting to you, do you know what painting I'm talking about?
No.
Okay. No. But if I do this, do you know what painting I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yes. So if I start to talk about it and describe it and talk about how I like the style and the way it was painted, you can look at the picture and know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to quote Bertrand Russell, who was a British philosopher and logician and mathematician, and he said, "Most of us can recognize a sparrow, but we'd be hard put to describe its characteristics clearly enough for someone else to recognize one. Far more sensible to show them a picture." As students, we use visual aids all the time, whether we use them ourselves or we're exposed to them through other students giving presentations or teachers using them in lectures. And it's important for us to know the basics because we need to use them, and it enhances presentations and speeches that we give. And some of us will be required in our careers to use presentations and speeches with visual aids in order to effectively communicate with our audience. And I've done some research that I will share with you about some basic tips and tricks about visual aids, specifically PowerPoint and posters. But first, I'm going to go over visual aids in general. In the journal Training and Development, Dennis McBride says that interaction with an audience is key, and visual aids allows us to actively communicate with them and teach them and get them on the same page as us, because that's our goal as a speaker, essentially, is we want them to know where we're going to go with our speech or with our presentation. And the visual aid is going to make sure that your audience is on the same page. People tend to start presentations well with their introduction, but as their presentation goes on, if they get lost with their visual aid, if you're using a PowerPoint and your slides get all messed up, or you're not sure what you're pointing to or what it is that you need to refer to, you lose your audience. And they get bored and they don't want to listen to you anymore. It's important that we present single ideas on our visual aids. We don't want to throw a bunch of thoughts at them all at once, because it's overload and your audience is not going to get that. We need to make sure that we only use key points in our visual aids. If we put our whole presentation and everything we're going to say on our visual aid, we as the presenter are going to start reading from it, and your audience is going to be reading your visual aid rather than looking at you and listening to you. The visual aid is only there to enhance what you are saying. There's some basically, visual aids will help us communicate with our audience, and PowerPoints are really good ways to do that. Dr. Dusty D. Howell, Associate Professor Associate Professor, he wrote in the Instructional Design and Technology magazine some helpful keys, there's some helpful ideas and tricks to do PowerPoints well. We lose credibility as a speaker or presenter when we get lost in our slides. So we're going through our presentation and all of a sudden we need to skip forward or we need to go back. If we don't know where the slide is or the order that they're in, we've lost credibility, and therefore we've lost our audience. It's important to practice with PowerPoints beforehand because there's so many components to them, and you want to make sure that you're utilizing everything that they offer, as well as you need to familiarize yourself so that you know exactly how to use it and you can communicate effectively with your audience. It's a good tip to give your audience a time to reflect. Allow them to pause a little bit. If you're having slide after slide after slide with information, with graphics, they're constantly having to look at the screen, and they get bombarded with information. If you put a white screen or a black screen up for them, then they can have a time to take that information and digest it. Another effective tool in presentations, or in visual aids rather, are posters. Posters are great for showing graphics, and if you've done correctly, they can effectively communicate with the audience by themselves without you having to speak. And you can use colors to help you communicate your message effectively. And we need to remember that as students, we need to know how to do visual aids. We can't get away from it. It's essential to our education, and we need to practice making posters, practice making PowerPoints, or whatever other visual aids you may use. And once we practice, we need to go forth and use them in any opportunity